She left the city to claim a forgotten cabin. What she found was a blood-bound legacy, a stranger who wasn't just a man, and a truth that would rip the world she knew to shreds. The forest doesn't just whisper secrets, it demands sacrifices. The evening was profound, and the serpentine mountain thoroughfare beckoned to me with an almost mesmerizing charm, its twists and declines veiled in enigma and moon-kissed confidences. As I, Emery Langford, navigated away from the oppressive neon brilliance of the urban sprawl, each pulse of my heart seemed to resonate with a promise long forgotten, a summons from the untamed country that murmured of fate and age-old traditions. The roadway, coiling like a sinuous serpent amidst towering pine trees and craggy bluffs, possessed an undeniable allure, drawing me into a domain where every silhouette and the faintest rustle of foliage hinted at a narrative yet to be revealed. Within the tranquility of that brisk, clear atmosphere, the city's unyielding tempo, its pressing schedules, its stark cement passages, and its discordant symphony of car horns receded like a far-off recollection. In their place, the serene grandeur of the natural world enveloped me, filling the emptiness left behind with a feeling that was simultaneously freeing and disquieting. With every bend, the scenery altered. Dense woodlands of vivid green yielded to an expanse of wild, uncultivated terrain, where the fragrance of pine and moist soil blended with suggestions of something far more ancient than time itself. As I ventured onward, my thoughts, Emery's thoughts, drifted back to a piece of correspondence, its handwriting delicate yet firm, a final memento from my grandmother, a woman as mysterious as the forest that now stretched before me. The letter had been an enigmatic communication, inscribed in refined strokes that spoke of inheritance, watchfulness, and a verity too deep to disregard. Emery, the cabin belongs to you now. There are matters you must recall, matters the city has caused you to forget. Be cautious about whom you place your trust in. Some obligations are never settled. These words had struck a chord with an odd sense of recognition, awakening an internal struggle that mixed aspiration with a foreboding sense of apprehension. Upon reaching the isolated cabin, an artifact seemingly suspended in time and overcome by nature's unyielding hold, I, Emery, felt as if I had entered a living recollection. The venerable edifice, its ivy-covered walls and time-worn wooden supports alluding to innumerable unshared sagas, radiated an atmosphere of tranquil seclusion. A lone lantern, its faint luminescence combating the encroaching darkness, was positioned by the entrance, a quiet guardian welcoming me back to a history I had long endeavored to evade. Inside, the dwelling was a storehouse of overlooked instances, dusty ledges filled with old volumes, the persistent scent of dried lavender, and the distinct aroma of aged timber. Each creak of the floor timbers and sigh of the breeze seemed imbued with memories, compelling me to face truths that had been interred deep within my spirit. Yet, even as the cabin seemed to receive me, an undercurrent of disquiet permeated the stillness, a subtle intimation that certain energies in this location were both observant and unfathomable. Outside, the surroundings had become curiously hushed, as though the natural world itself had paused in expectation. The forest, immense and unyielding, held its breath in that laden quietude. Every rustle, every far-off murmur was amplified into a symphony of suspense. It was in these instances that my instinct shrieked of unseen gazes watching from the gloom, of a presence lingering just beyond the perimeter of the lantern's dim illumination. The isolation was tangible, a fragile equilibrium of solitude, and the stirring of something ancient, an age-old summons that beckoned from the forest's depths. As the evening's chill intensified, the divisions between history and the current moment became indistinct. The cabin, with its deteriorating exterior and silent reverberations, was not merely a refuge, but a gateway to another era, a period when mythical figures roamed the earth and the powers of destiny wove complex fates. The dance of shadow and light fashioned a backdrop upon which every whispered memory, every concealed secret, was rendered with exquisite precision. In that instant, the wilderness served as both a haven and a field of battle for the heart's most profound conflicts. I, Emery, stood at the brink of this puzzling domain, my inner disquiet reflected by the stark juxtaposition between the forest's oppressive gloom and the delicate yet defiant luminescence of hope radiating from within me. Every intuition informed me that I was being drawn into a confrontation, not just with the vestiges of a forgotten past, but with the very core of destiny itself. The solitude of this location was misleading, a serene exterior that concealed the tempest of emotions and the raw, unyielding force simmering beneath the surface. In that cinematic interlude, as the wind whispered through the trees and the initial stars started to penetrate the velvet sky, I realized my journey had only just commenced. The call of the wild was an irresistible enticement, steeped in mystery, isolation, and the promise of renewal. It was a call that dared me to embrace not only the allure of the unknown but also the darkness that resided within. The delicate equilibrium of nature and fate, of affection and yearning, was on the verge of unraveling in manners I could hardly fathom. This was the juncture when the past and present collided, a fragile, luminous moment suspended in time. And as I, Emery, took my initial tentative steps further into the night, the path ahead unfolded like a tapestry of dreams and nightmares, inviting me to unearth the untold secrets of my heritage, the genuine significance of destiny, and the potent, inexorable force that bound me to the wild. The cabin, the forest, and the night itself whispered of a future where every heartbeat was a defiant promise, every shadow a custodian of ancient lore, and every breath a progression toward an unimaginable destiny. In this silent, evocative realm, where isolation encountered the fierce summons of fate, my journey, Emery's journey, was initiated, a journey that would irrevocably change the trajectory of my life, weaving me into the tapestry of a myth as ancient as the stars and as relentless as the moon's pull. I, Emery Langford, departed from the city's dissonance with a combination of hesitation and resolve, guiding my well-used sedan onto a winding mountain thoroughfare that seemed to murmur its own confidences. The pavement, smoothed by the passage of years yet still uneven with flaws, snaked like a serpent through the dense, primeval woodland. Vanished were the neon illuminations and strident horns, a striking dissimilarity to the wild, untamed splendor that now enveloped me. As I ventured deeper into nature's core, the city's sterile cadences receded into a far-off recollection, superseded by the rhythmic orchestra of rustling foliage and the gentle murmur of a concealed waterway. The mountain roadway itself played a part in this developing narrative, its dark, meandering course luring me toward an unknown fate. Each twist and incline unveiled glimpses of the landscape's unadulterated majesty, towering pines stretching skyward, their boughs intertwining like nature's own sanctuary, and rugged bluffs that loomed in silent magnificence. The cool nocturnal air, laden with the fragrance of pine and moist earth, brushed against my skin, carrying with it a promise of secrets awaiting discovery. Resting on the passenger seat lay a solitary envelope, a handwritten missive that had arrived without warning, its borders frayed as if burdened by the weight of innumerable unshared sagas. My grandmother, Emery's grandmother, a woman whose existence had been as puzzling as the forest itself, had inscribed the message in a neat, refined script. The letter stated, "Emery, the cabin belongs to you now. There are matters you must recall, matters the city has caused you to forget. Be cautious about whom you place your trust in. Some obligations are never settled." Those words, though sparse, were imbued with an urgency that resonated profoundly within me, awakening recollections of a past filled with both marvel and admonition. With each kilometer that passed, The city's manufactured comforts transformed into a diminishing echo, superseded by a palpable unease that permeated the interior of my vehicle. The scenery transitioned gradually, from the structured disarray of urban expansion to the untamed wilderness, where every gust of wind and every play of light on the forest floor bore a hint of mystery. As I, Emery, neared my destination, the terrain became more rugged, the roadway more constricted and less accommodating, as though it were intentionally directing me toward a location steeped in overlooked history. At long last, the old cabin materialized from the shroud of trees, a solitary edifice clinging precariously to the precipice of time. Its time-worn exterior, draped in creeping ivy and marked by years of unyielding seasons, exuded an atmosphere of tranquil seclusion. The wooden siding, darkened by the progression of time, creaked under the gentle caress of the wind, as if whispering sagas of long-lost days and untold tragedies. A single lantern, barely aglow against the encroaching twilight, hung by the entrance like a lone guardian, its feeble illumination casting elongated shadows on the overgrown pathway leading to the doorway. Exiting the car, I, Emery, paused to take in the haunting particulars of my inheritance. The cabin's door, heavy with the burden of history, groaned in objection as I pushed it ajar. Inside, the atmosphere was dense with the intermingled fragrances of aged timber, dried lavender, and something far more indefinable, a scent that hinted at secrets, memories, and perhaps even peril. The interior was dimly illuminated, with beams of moonlight seeping through grimy windows, lighting up specks of dust that danced like tiny phantoms in the quiet. Every surface seemed to bear the residue of lives once led: faded photographs, brittle letters, and mementos that spoke of an era when the world was both more straightforward and infinitely more enigmatic. My fingers, Emery's fingers, traced the worn perimeters of a wooden table, its surface marred by the gentle yet persistent touch of time. The soft murmur of the wind outside was joined by a deeper, almost imperceptible hum of history, a murmur that seemed to imply that the cabin was more than just an artifact, but a living repository of the past. As I wandered further into the chamber, my eyes were drawn to a grand, dusty bookshelf, its shelves sagging under the burden of ancient volumes and forgotten lore. There, amidst the relics of a bygone epoch, lay a thick, leather-bound tome, its pages yellowed and edges curled, a silent testament to the knowledge and secrets my grandmother had guarded so fiercely. The letter had been more than a simple inheritance. It was a key to unlocking a legacy that had been concealed beneath layers of time and neglect. Outside, the forest seemed to draw in closer, its dark silhouettes observing with silent anticipation. The boundary between the familiar and the unfamiliar blurred as my, Emery's, pulse accelerated. The cabin, with all its eerie charm and haunting beauty, promised answers, and perhaps more questions than I could imagine. In that moment, standing alone in a place where every creak of the floor and whisper of the wind held significance, I felt both the weight of my past and the pull of an inevitable destiny. I, Emery, took a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs with a blend of apprehension and hope. The legacy of my grandmother, the mysterious letter, and the haunting allure of the cabin coalesced into a single, undeniable truth. I was meant to be here. In the silence of that ancient dwelling, surrounded by the murmurs of the past and the promise of secrets waiting to be unraveled, I braced myself for the journey ahead, a journey that would compel me to confront the mysteries of my heritage and embrace a destiny as old as the forest itself. As I, Emery, stepped into the dim interior of the cabin, an immediate wave of scents assailed my senses, a rich tapestry of aged wood intermingled with the delicate, almost melancholic aroma of faded lavender. There was, however, an underlying note that defied easy description, something wilder and untamed, that hinted at the mysteries buried within these walls. Each inhalation seemed to draw me deeper into a past shrouded in secrets, and as I moved further inside, my every step echoed softly against the creaking wooden floorboards, as if the very structure was whispering long-forgotten tales. The hallway was constricted and steeped in a haunting stillness. Moonlight, filtering through grimy, time-worn windows, cast long, quivering shadows that danced slowly across the faded wallpaper and splintered furniture. Emery, paused, my heart quickening as I sensed a subtle, almost imperceptible presence lurking at the edges of my vision, a silent witness to my arrival. It was as if the cabin itself was alive, silently observing me with a quiet promise of secrets yet to be revealed. I could almost hear the murmur of voices, soft and indistinct, echoing through the hallways, a gentle susurration that mingled with the creaks and groans of the old building. Every sound, no matter how faint, seemed charged with emotion, as though the walls were imbued with the memories of those who had once walked these floors. In my mind, a quiet inner monologue began to unfold. Is this the home my grandmother spoke of, a place where every mark, every faded detail, holds a story waiting to be told? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, not out of fear, but from the realization that I was stepping into a living history, a realm where the past and the present intertwined in an intricate dance. My eyes wandered to the walls, where subtle marks and scratches hinted at struggles long past. There were deep gouges in the wooden beams, scratches that looked almost deliberate, as if carved by a force, or hand, that had a story of its own to share. Each mark was a silent testament to events that had left their imprint on this venerable structure, an archive of hidden memories. The sight stirred a mixture of curiosity and apprehension within me, a yearning to unravel the layers of history that the cabin so carefully guarded. Moving further into the room, my gaze was drawn to a time-worn portrait that hung askew on the wall, a faded image of a stern woman, with eyes that seemed to follow my every move. The resemblance to my grandmother was undeniable, and for a brief moment, I felt as though I was being beckoned to remember a past I had long tried to forget. The interplay of light and shadow around the portrait lent it an almost spectral quality, reinforcing the sense that nothing in this place was as it seemed. Outside, the wind picked up, sending a cascade of loose leaves skittering across the wooden floor. With each gust, the eerie silence was punctuated by nature's own subtle symphony, a reminder that the outside world was both separate from, and yet intrinsically linked to, this sanctuary of secrets. Emery, could not shake the feeling that every sound, every whisper of the wind, carried with it an unspoken warning. You're not alone, my instinct murmured, blending seamlessly with the hushed echoes of the past. In the quiet recesses of the cabin, I found a small study, a secluded nook lined with ancient tomes and scattered papers. Here, the air was even thicker with the scent of old paper and the faint trace of incense, as though some ritual had once been performed within these walls. Emery's eyes landed on a peculiar, almost out-of-place detail, a series of delicate symbols etched into the worn surface of a wooden desk. They were unlike any marking I had seen before, intricate designs that seemed to pulse with an inner light, as if holding the key to long-buried secrets. The symbols exuded a quiet intensity, compelling me to linger in that moment of suspended time. My mind raced as I tried to piece together the fragments of my thoughts. What do these marks mean? Who carved them, and for what purpose? The questions swirled like a vortex in my consciousness, each one deepening the mystery that enveloped me. A sense of foreboding mingled with anticipation, as if the very air around me was charged with the promise of revelations yet to come. My inner voice, Emery's inner voice, grew louder, resonating with both wonder and a touch of trepidation. I felt as though I had crossed an invisible threshold, leaving behind a world of predictable routines for one where every detail mattered, a world where every creak, every scent, and every shadow was a clue in a grand, unfolding narrative. The cabin, with its weathered beauty and haunting quiet, was more than a mere shelter. It was a repository of emotions, memories, and perhaps even the key to unlocking my own destiny. In that profound stillness, as I stood amidst the silent echoes of a bygone era, I couldn't help but feel that I was on the brink of discovering something monumental, a truth that had been patiently waiting in the depths of this forgotten place. The subtle interplay of sensory impressions, the lingering presence that I could almost touch, and the enigmatic marks that adorned the cabin all conspired to create an atmosphere thick with promise. Here, in the hushed embrace of the past, I was ready to confront the mysteries that had haunted my family for generations and to step into a destiny that was as wild and unpredictable as the forest itself. Stepping outside into the cool embrace of the forest, Emery, felt the stark contrast between the wild, untamed woods and the regimented pulse of the city I had left behind. The urban hum, its constant buzz of traffic and neon chatter, was replaced by the organic symphony of rustling leaves, creaking branches, and the distant murmur of a stream. Here, in the heart of nature, every breath of wind carried a hint of ancient secrets, and every shaft of sunlight filtered through the canopy like a whispered promise of destiny. As I wandered along a narrow dirt path that wound between towering pines and gnarled oaks, the rugged terrain underfoot seemed to echo the raw, elemental energy of the forest. The ground was soft and uneven, sprinkled with pine needles and the occasional broken twig. The air was cool and invigorating, tinged with the earthy scent of damp moss and loamy soil. My heart, Emery's heart, still racing from the mysteries of the cabin, began to settle into a rhythm that matched the natural cadence around me. It was then that I noticed a figure working quietly at the edge of a small clearing, a solitary man, his strong arms rhythmically swinging an axe as he split a log with deliberate precision. He stood there like a statue of rustic strength, silhouetted against the deep green backdrop. The man's dark hair, slightly unkempt, framed a face that was at once rugged and intriguing. There was a spark in his eyes, a flash of intensity that hinted at stories untold and battles fought in silence. Emery paused, my curiosity piqued. I had never been one to shy away from the unknown, and the enigmatic woodsman stirred something inside me, a blend of weariness and unexpected amusement. With a measured step, I approached, my presence unnoticed at first, as if the forest itself had absorbed my quiet arrival. Splitting wood or splitting hearts? I quipped lightly, unable to resist a remark that mixed dry wit with the natural tension of the moment. The woodsman paused, his axe suspended mid-swing. He glanced up, his gaze meeting mine with a mixture of surprise and a subtle, knowing smile that hinted at mischief. "Depends on the day," he replied, his voice low and smooth, carrying the gravelly cadence of countless whispered legends. For a moment, the forest held its breath, the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a bird the only sounds punctuating the silence between us. There was an unspoken understanding, a cryptic exchange of glances that spoke of fate and coincidences too strange to dismiss. Emery, stepped closer, my eyes tracing the lines of his weathered face, noting the quiet determination in every feature. "I'm Emery," I said, extending a hand in a gesture that was both tentative and defiant, a declaration of my willingness to engage with this mysterious stranger on his own rugged terms. He offered his hand, calloused and strong, in return. "Kieran," he introduced himself simply, as though his name held its own weight in the language of the wild. "And you're not from around here, are you?" His tone was teasing, yet edged with a seriousness that suggested he could read much more into my presence than I let on. The interplay of humor and foreboding in our brief dialogue sent a shiver of anticipation through me. Emery. The woods around us seemed to lean in, as if eager to listen to the unfolding conversation. Kieran's eyes, glimmering like captured firelight, betrayed a depth of experience and a hint of destiny that resonated with the very pulse of the forest. His easy manner in handling the axe, the precision of his swing, and the way he seemed completely at home in this raw, uncharted territory painted a picture of a man who belonged to the land, an elemental force shaped by the ancient trees and rugged landscapes. As we walked together along the narrow trail, our conversation turned to the strange intersections of fate and nature. The city has its comforts, Emery remarked dryly, but it can't compete with the raw truth of a forest, where every sound and shadow tells a story. Kieran nodded, his gaze drifting momentarily to the towering pines overhead before he responded, "Out here, you learn that silence is not emptiness. It's a canvas. Every rustle is a brushstroke, every gust of wind a secret waiting to be revealed." Our words mingled with the ambient sounds of the wilderness, a harmonious blend of nature's cadence and human curiosity. There was an almost palpable tension in the air, a magnetic pull that suggested our meeting was no mere accident. The forest, with its timeless wisdom and veiled mysteries, seemed to affirm that we were both travelers on an intertwined path, drawn together by forces beyond our understanding. The subtle banter between us was punctuated by quiet moments of introspection. My mind, Emery's mind, churned with questions. What did fate intend by bringing me to this secluded place? And who was Kieran, really a simple woodsman or something far more enigmatic? With each step, the forest whispered answers in a language older than words, leaving me with a sense of anticipation and a hunger for the secrets that lay hidden beneath the ancient canopy. In that rugged, elemental world, as the gap between the familiarity of the city and the wild mystery of nature dissolved, I found myself poised at the brink of discovery. The enigmatic figure beside me, with his unspoken hints of destiny, made me wonder if our meeting was a mere coincidence, or the first act of a grander, unfolding narrative, one that would forever alter the course of my life. Inside the shadowed confines of the cabin, Emery, felt the weight of history settle around me like a thick, familiar mist. Every step I took further into the dim interior seemed to echo with memories of a time long past, a time when my grandmother's wisdom and warnings were woven into the very fabric of this home. The silence was profound, yet alive with the soft rustle of shifting air and the occasional creak of old wood, as if the cabin itself were whispering secrets to those who dared to listen. Drawn by an inexplicable pull, I found myself gravitating toward a secluded corner of the main room, where a battered, carved wooden box lay half-concealed by a frayed, dusty rug. With cautious hands, I lifted the edge of the rug, revealing a series of delicate, almost imperceptible markings etched into the floorboards beneath. The symbols, swirling and intertwined like ancient script, radiated an energy that was both haunting and magnetic, a silent promise that this place guarded mysteries far beyond the realm of the ordinary. My heart quickened as I carefully removed the box, the sound of its creaking hinges punctuating the stillness of the room. Inside, nestled among layers of yellowed paper and brittle cloth, lay several letters penned in the unmistakable, elegant hand of my grandmother. The paper crackled softly as Emery, unfolded the top letter, my eyes scanning the meticulously written words. Each line resonated with a cryptic urgency, a message that carried both love and a dire warning. Emery, if you are reading these words, then fate has drawn you back to where you were always meant to be. Remember the legacy that binds us, and be wary of those who would seek to unravel what has been woven by destiny. The letters, fragile yet potent with meaning, spoke of a heritage steeped in mystery, a lineage marked by an otherworldly bond that defied time. As I read on, my inner voice, Emery's inner voice, mingled with the tangible silence, questioning, what secret did my grandmother carry with her? What legacy do these words hide beneath their gentle cadence? The questions echoed softly within me, heightening my awareness of the room's every detail. Around me, the cabin seemed to come alive. The interplay of light and shadow shifted with a deliberate rhythm, and the once still air now carried the soft murmur of whispers, as if the walls themselves were exchanging guarded confidences. Outside, the wind had begun to pick up, its persistent hum weaving through the cracks and crevices, further stirring the aged timbers and rustling loose papers scattered on a time-worn desk. Emery, moved toward the desk, my steps measured and careful. Resting on its surface was an open tome, its pages yellowed and edges curled, a book that appeared to have been a repository of my grandmother's long-held secrets. There, among the faded ink and delicate sketches, was a recurring emblem, a wolf's head entwined with a crescent moon. The emblem glowed faintly in the sparse light, an ethereal reminder of the supernatural bond that seemed to pulse through my veins. It was a symbol that resonated with an inexplicable familiarity, as though it were a key to a door that I had long forgotten existed. In that quiet moment, as my Emery's eyes traced the intricate lines of the emblem, a chill ran down my spine, a shiver that was both unsettling and strangely affirming. It was as if the very air around me had thickened, charged with an unseen presence that observed my every move. The soft creak of the floor, the distant whisper of the wind, and the subtle rustling of paper combined into a symphony of suspense. Each sound was a reminder that I was not alone, that beyond the veil of time and memory, something ancient and powerful watched, waiting to reveal itself. My thoughts swirled like the dust motes dancing in the pale moonlight, merging with the mounting tension that filled the room. Is this the fate that has been written in the shadows of my lineage? Am I to follow in the footsteps of a legacy too vast to comprehend? The questions, though unspoken, carried the weight of generations. With each passing second, the symbols and the letters coalesced into a narrative of destiny, a narrative that promised both wonder and peril. The quiet intensity of the cabin was punctuated by a sudden, almost imperceptible sound, a soft tap, as though something delicate had shifted in the darkness. Emery paused, my breath catching in my throat as my eyes darted to the source of the sound. For a moment, the room was enveloped in a silence, so profound it felt almost tangible. Then, as quickly as it had come, the sound faded, leaving behind a lingering sense of anticipation. In that charged pause, I felt a connection, a tether to the past, to my grandmother, and to the mystical forces that had long shaped my destiny. The letters, the emblem, and the subtle sounds all whispered a promise that the secrets of this place were not meant to remain hidden, and that my journey had only just begun. Here, in the quiet sanctuary of the cabin, where every creak and shadow was laden with meaning, I was poised to step into a future defined by the interplay of fate and the supernatural, a future that beckoned with both hope and a foreboding certainty. The initial light of daybreak crept tenderly over the skyline, bathing the woodland in a gentle, golden radiance that transformed each tree and leaf into a vibrant tableau. Emery, sat on the creaking wooden veranda of the cabin, my fingers smudged with graphite as I carefully drew in my worn notebook. The crisp morning atmosphere carried a hint of moisture and pine, blending with the enduring aroma of the preceding evening, a mysterious fusion of old timber, dried lavender, and something indefinably untamed that still murmured of confidences and half-recalled vows. In the quiet seclusion of that nascent day, every particular seemed to throb with a delicate vividness. The forest, still enveloped in the soft luminescence of early light, appeared almost otherworldly, a location where time decelerated and the past and present merged into a tender, unvoiced dialogue. My gaze, Emery's gaze, lingered on the way the golden illumination seeped through the boughs, each ray a silent note in a natural symphony, a subtle intimation of the transient allure of every instant. As I sketched, my thoughts drifted back to the dreamlike encounters of the previous night, where the reverberations of odd voices and shifting shadows had hinted at a destiny inscribed in the language of the wild. Lost in the contemplative rhythm of my drawing, I, Emery, scarcely perceived the sound of soft footfalls on the gravel walkway until they drew nearer, disrupting the stillness with a quiet presence. Turning my head, I saw him, Kieran Bale, emerging from the dense embrace of the forest. His form was bathed in the early illumination, and for a moment, he appeared almost like an illusion, both enigmatic and achingly familiar. His eyes, deep and burning with an unvoiced intensity, met mine with a look that held both inquisitiveness and a hint of a knowing smile. An undeniable magnetic force existed between us, as if fate had orchestrated the convergence of our paths in this ageless moment. Kieran paused a few strides away, his rugged features softened by the gentle warmth of dawn. His dark hair was tousled by the cool breeze, and the lines on his face, etched by years spent in the wilderness, bore the weight of unshared narratives. "Good morning, Emery," he uttered, his voice a low, melodious murmur that seemed to resonate with the whispering wind. There was no artifice in his salutation, only the sincere, unguarded tone of a man who belonged as much to the forest as he did to the present moment. My heart, Emery's heart, fluttered, a mixture of curiosity and a tentative apprehension stirring within me. I closed my sketchbook slowly, the scratch of graphite on paper echoing softly in the stillness. "Good morning, Kieran," I responded, my voice gentle yet tinged with an unspoken query. It was as if the morning itself held its breath, waiting for us to acknowledge the delicate interplay of fate and desire that had woven its way into our lives. The air between us was charged, not with the clamor of overt passion, but with a quiet intensity, a silent conversation of glances and soft smiles that spoke of mysteries shared and secrets yet to be unveiled. For a few moments, we simply stood there, allowing the splendor of the dawn to fill the space between us. The golden light seemed to paint us in hues of possibility, each ray a promise of revelations yet to come. The forest, with its ancient trees and whispering winds, lent a sacred air to our encounter, as if nature itself had ordained that this meeting was more than mere chance. There was a softness to Kieran's expression now, a trace of vulnerability that belied his rugged exterior. It was a glimpse into a soul that had known both solitude and the fierce, consuming pull of destiny. I, Emery, felt the weight of unasked questions and unspoken emotions hang in the air. "Last night was unexpected," I finally murmured, my eyes searching his for answers. The words were simple, yet laden with 1,000 layers of meaning, a cautious acknowledgement of a connection that defied easy explanation. Kieran's gaze held mine steadily, as if he were weighing my words against the backdrop of his own guarded secrets. In the dark, the forest reveals truths that the daylight hides. Kieran replied softly, his tone both enigmatic and reassuring. His answer, though vague, resonated deeply within me, stirring memories of whispers and shadows that had danced around the edges of my dreams. There was something undeniably fated about our meeting, a subtle undercurrent of destiny that intertwined our lives like the delicate threads of a spider's web catching the morning dew. As the sun climbed higher, the mist slowly lifted, revealing more of the forest's hidden contours and lending clarity to the blurred edges of memory. I, Emery, and Kieran continued to share quiet, tentative words, each sentence a small step into the unknown, each smile a spark of recognition in a shared mystery. In that luminous moment, the past and present converged, and the promise of a new beginning shimmered. Within the gentle illumination of daybreak, the delicate dance of feelings, the silent magnetism of destiny, and the subtle enchantment of the early hours combined into a memorable meeting, one that suggested each instant harbored the potential for something remarkable, something fated to alter their existences permanently. The cabin's serenity, was abruptly broken by an unease that made the atmosphere palpably heavy. A tension signifying the approaching moment when actuality would splinter and disclose an unbelievable verity. Emery's heart hammered in her chest like an unceasing beat, as Kieran's countenance transformed from serene charm to something primal and exposed. The soft morning brightness that had previously illuminated their hesitant smiles now appeared to diminish before the swell of shadow that collected in his gaze. It felt as though the woodland itself had drawn a breath, pausing in anticipation of the disclosure that was imminent. In a measured, deliberate movement, Kieran drew nearer, his expression hardening as if sculpted from ancient rock. The refreshing breeze that had previously danced between them transformed into a murmur of fate, echoing around the tranquil recesses of the dwelling. "Emery," he breathed, his voice quivering with a blend of determination and fragility. "There is a matter I must share, a matter that connects us beyond this earthly existence." Before I could formulate a response, his metamorphosis commenced. A stunning, visceral exhibition of nature's ferocity and splendor intertwined. His eyes, once a familiar, smoldering amber, blazed with an unearthly luminescence, and his skin seemed to ripple with a peculiar, primal force. The very atmosphere surrounding him shimmered, as coarse, dark fur emerged along his arms and face, a transformation both frightening and captivating. The understated elegance of the man I had begun to recognize dissolved into a creature of myth, a werewolf, the legendary embodiment of the wild's untamed essence. My breath caught, Emery's mind fracturing between disbelief and a potent, undeniable pull that surged like an electrical force. Every part of my being recoiled from the impossible spectacle, yet the magnetism of our fated connection anchored me to the instant. A tempest of emotions erupted within me, a storm of astonishment, apprehension, yearning, and an overwhelming awareness of destiny. The revelation was not merely a supernatural fact, it was a profound shift in my very reality, a summons to embrace an existence that challenged the limits of my former, predictable life. "Kieran," I whispered, my voice raspy and unsteady, each syllable imbued with both terror and awe. The sound of her name, tinged with his vulnerability, shattered the stillness like a delicate enchantment. In that suspended moment, the barriers between the known and the wild unknown disintegrated, leaving only a visceral truth in their place. He took another deliberate stride, and with it, the beast within him appeared to contend with the vestiges of his human spirit. "Emery," he reiterated, his voice now a guttural fusion of man and creature, resonating like the roar of ancient woodlands. "I have borne this affliction, this fate, for a duration you cannot fathom. Our connection is inscribed in the cosmos, engraved into the very core of my being. I am more than a mere man. I am the guardian of an age-old vow, the personification of the wild's unending essence." His words struck me like a thunderbolt, reverberating through my mind and igniting a conflagration of conflicting emotions. A part of me shrank in horror from the raw, animalistic power that emanated from him, while another part, inexplicably drawn to him, longed to yield to that very force. The intensity of his presence, the palpable energy of his transformation, sent shivers cascading down my spine. In that instant, the distinction between predator and protector blurred, and the depth of their fated bond became overwhelmingly apparent. As the beastly form solidified, so too did the gravity of their interwoven destiny. I, Emery, felt the collision of worlds, the mundane and the mystical clashing within me, shaking me to my core. My thoughts raced with questions demanding answers. How can this be? What does this signify for us? The undeniable allure of his wild, unrestrained nature contended with the rational part of my mind, creating a tumultuous symphony of emotion. In the charged quiet that ensued, The cabin seemed to transform into a sanctuary of raw, unfiltered truth. Shadows danced across the walls as if echoing the tumult within me, and every creak of the old wood reverberated like a heartbeat, marking the passage of this pivotal moment. The supernatural bond that now linked them pulsed between them, an invisible thread drawing them inexorably closer, defying the conventions of the world they had known. Tears, unbidden and shimmering with a strange light, welled in my Emery's eyes, not solely from fear, but from the overwhelming realization of a destiny that had been hidden in plain sight. My inner turmoil found voice in a trembling, yet resolute exhalation. I sense it, I confess softly, the words laden with both despair and hope. I sense the draw of something ancient and powerful, something that beckons to me, even as it fills me with terror. Kieran's gaze softened, the fierce wildness in his eyes momentarily yielding to a tender vulnerability that belied the monster he had become. "We are connected by more than destiny," he stated, his voice a low, resonant whisper that vibrated with the weight of a centuries-old promise. "We are interwoven by an energy that eludes understanding, an influence that is simultaneously our affliction and our deliverance." In that haunting, electrified moment, the room became a crucible of transformation, a place where the mundane dissolved into myth, and where every heartbeat pulsed with the raw energy of destiny. The revelation of Kieran's true nature was not merely an unveiling of the supernatural. It was an invitation for me, Emery, to step beyond the limitations of my former life and embrace the wild, unpredictable, and beautifully terrifying truth of who they were meant to be. As the night receded and the first light of dawn began to push back the shadows, I stood at the threshold of a new reality, a reality where destiny and desire, fear and fascination, clashed in a symphony of emotion. In that quiet, tumultuous space, I realized that to deny this bond was to deny the very essence of my being. And so, with my heart laid bare and my spirit trembling on the edge of transformation, I allowed myself to be drawn into the fierce, unyielding embrace of fate, a fate that was as inevitable as it was extraordinary. In the tranquil aftermath of the revelation, as dawn's gentle luminescence began to warm the lingering coolness of night, I, Emery, felt a magnetic attraction that surpassed the limits of fear and uncertainty. The reverberations of Kieran's confession still echoed in my heart, a truth as untamed as the forest and as ancient as the moon itself. In that instant, every doubt that had once restrained me dissipated like mist in the early light, replaced by an irresistible summons toward the unknown. With each step I took toward him, the forest around us seemed to fall into a hushed reverence, the soft rustle of leaves underfoot, the muted chirp of distant birds, and even the whisper of the morning breeze conspired to create a symphony of intimacy. My heart, Emery's heart, pounded with a mixture of exhilaration and calm determination, as if the very air were urging me to surrender to the passion that flickered at the edge of my consciousness. Kieran, still bearing the raw traces of his dual nature, stood waiting at the edge of a clearing where the golden light of the new day bathed him in a celestial glow. His eyes, deep and smoldering with unspoken emotion, followed my approach with an intensity that made the world around us seem to blur into insignificance. In that charged space between us, every glance, every subtle gesture was imbued with a promise of transformation, a promise that the union of our souls could transcend even the harshest truths of our past. As I, Emery, drew closer, the charged energy between us became almost palpable, a quiet, undeniable current that pulsed with every heartbeat. The air vibrated with the mingling of anticipation and relief, the release of emotions too long suppressed. My breath caught in my throat as I reached out, not with trembling uncertainty, but with a confident longing that belied the chaos of my inner world. In that decisive moment, I chose to embrace the impossible connection that had haunted my every thought since the night's revelation. Our reunion was a slow, cinematic montage of moments strung together by raw passion and delicate vulnerability. My eyes, Emery's eyes, shimmering with unshed tears of release, met Kieran's, and in that gaze, worlds collided. The distance between us evaporated until there was nothing but the warmth of our shared desire. Time itself seemed to hold its breath as I stepped into his arms, the space between us dissolving into an intimate closeness that felt as natural as the meeting of day and night. The first kiss arrived as a spark that ignited an inferno of emotion. It was not a kiss of mere affection, but one laden with the weight of destiny, a declaration of unity that was as tender as it was fierce. As our lips met, it felt like the culmination of every unspoken word and every moment of longing, a profound communion that bridged the gap between human frailty and the wild, untamed spirit within us both. The kiss was smooth and deliberate, unfolding with the grace of a well-rehearsed dance, yet charged with the spontaneity of a heart finally set free. In that kiss, Emery, felt the transformation begin, a surge of energy that rippled through my very core. It was as if the ancient bond, written in the language of fate and sealed by the wild heartbeat of the forest, had been ignited within me. Every touch, every subtle caress, carried the promise of renewal. The boundaries of my former self, the cautious, inhibited woman who had once clung to the safety of the known, melted away, replaced by a powerful sense of belonging. With each passing second, the intensity of our connection grew, wrapping around me like a warm, familiar blanket, dispelling the lingering chill of uncertainty. Kieran's hands, gentle, yet commanding, traced the contours of my face and neck, as if memorizing every line and curve, etching their memory into his soul. His embrace was a paradox of strength and tenderness, a silent vow that, no matter the storms that might arise, our bond would endure. The rhythmic pulse of our hearts seemed to merge into a single, unwavering beat, a steady reminder that destiny had led us to this singular, transformative moment. As the kiss deepened, Emery's thoughts became a quiet hum in the background, overtaken by the raw, sensual reality of now. Every sense was heightened, the subtle taste of him, the intoxicating warmth of his skin, the delicate scent of earth and wildness mingling with the lingering fragrance of lavender that still clung to me. The world around us receded into a soft, blurred canvas of golden hues, leaving only the clarity of our united souls in stark, breathtaking focus. In that intimate exchange, the forest bore witness to the birth of a love both fated and fierce, a love that defied the confines of logic and soared on the wings of destiny. The first sparks of passion had not only kindled a fire within us, but had also rewritten the narrative of our lives, merging two solitary paths into one vibrant, intertwined journey. As we slowly pulled apart, eyes still locked in a silent conversation, Emery, knew that this was only the beginning, a beginning that promised to unravel mysteries, challenge fate, and ultimately redefine what it meant to truly love and be loved. In that radiant, ephemeral moment, the rise of our love became a beacon, a luminous force guiding us forward into a future where every heartbeat, every whispered word, and every shared touch would echo the profound truth of our indomitable bond. As twilight began its slow descent over the woodland, the lingering warmth of the morning's passion was swiftly moderated by a sudden alteration in the atmosphere. The vivid golden tones that had enveloped Emery and Kieran in their tender embrace yielded to deepening shadows, and the forest, once an ethereal canvas of light, transformed into a domain of foreboding mystery. The whispering breeze, now tinged with an icy sharpness, carried with it an unsettling promise, a hint that darkness was reasserting its control. Emery, stood at the entrance of the cabin, my heart still echoing the gentle rhythm of our earlier union. The remnants of that passionate encounter clung to me like a comforting yet delicate warmth, a guiding light amidst the encroaching gloom. Yet, as the light diminished, a subtle, creeping doubt began to gnaw at the edges of my consciousness. The vivid recollections of Kieran's fierce, unyielding gaze and the fire of our kiss conflicted with the quiet, disquieting sounds that now punctuated the silence of the approaching night. The forest surrounding me seemed to release a cold, misty exhalation, the once gentle rustling of foliage now transformed into a low, ominous murmur. Shadows extended long and menacingly, twisting around ancient trees as if they were reaching out to ensnare unsuspecting souls. The delicate interplay of light and dark that had painted the morning in soft, reassuring hues now rendered the world a chiaroscuro of beauty and peril, a breathtaking scene of nature's raw, unpredictable power. Inside my mind, Emery's emotions churned tumultuously. The memory of our tender embrace brought a momentary smile to my lips, a spark of hope that whispered of destiny fulfilled. But that hope was swiftly overshadowed by the return of an all too familiar uncertainty. Questions began to swirl like autumn leaves caught in a sudden gust. Was the bond that had so fiercely united us enough to withstand the encroaching darkness? Could our love, as profound and consuming as it was, survive the impending storm that the night promised to bring? I recalled the way Kieran's eyes had blazed with an almost unearthly intensity, a silent vow that our destinies were intertwined. Yet now, as the night deepened, those very eyes seemed to vanish into the darkness, leaving me with the stark reality that the safety of our shared passion was fragile, a candle flame flickering in a cold, unyielding wind. The soft murmur of the forest, which earlier had sung of renewal and promise, now carried a dissonant tone, a subtle, persistent reminder that danger was never far away. The ambience of the forest was punctuated by sporadic, unsettling sounds, a distant snap of a twig underfoot, the echo of a low, mournful howl, and the rhythmic creaking of the cabin's aging timbers. Each sound was a harbinger, a delicate yet insistent warning that something was amiss. Emery's senses sharpened, and my internal conflict became all too palpable, a collision of the lingering beauty of our connection with the encroaching chill of uncertainty. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every shift of shadow, felt imbued with an intent that was as enigmatic as it was menacing. The juxtaposition of our earlier passion and the cold tension of the night was stark. The memory of Kieran's warm embrace and the taste of his kiss lingered on my skin, a tactile reminder of the undeniable bond we shared. And yet, as the forest grew darker and the night unfurled its cloak of foreboding around me, that warmth felt precarious, a delicate spark, struggling against the overwhelming pull of impending conflict. In that moment, Emery, felt the duality of my existence, the beauty of love intertwined with the inevitability of struggle. The night was not merely a backdrop for our union, but an active, sentient presence that could either nurture our fragile bond or devour it whole. My heart, still buoyed by the memory of our connection, now pounded with an urgent, anxious rhythm, a silent plea for clarity amid the encroaching chaos. As I took a tentative step forward, the forest's ominous symphony grew louder, a chorus of unseen forces, each note resonating with the weight of ancient, unresolved tensions. The interplay of beauty and danger was now undeniable. The very air around me vibrated with a quiet intensity that promised both wonder and calamity. It was a moment suspended in time, where the past's tender intimacy and the present's stark uncertainty collided, leaving me, Emery, to grapple with the inescapable truth that love and danger often danced a perilous duet. In the depths of that encroaching darkness, I realized that the fall was not simply a descent into night. It was a test of the strength of our bond, a challenge that would demand every ounce of courage, passion, and resolve. And as the forest closed in around me, I vowed to hold on to the memory of our passion, letting it be a guiding light even as the shadows threatened to overwhelm me. The night was coming, and with it, the promise of a reckoning that would redefine everything I believed about love, destiny, and the price of following one's heart. Night had deepened into an unforgiving void as I, Emery, found myself torn from the fragile solace of the cabin. In an instant, my world had tilted into chaos, a maelstrom of snarling beasts and ruthless, predatory intent. Before I could react, powerful arms seized me, dragging me away from the relative safety of the forest clearing. The air was thick with the tang of blood and fear. In the blink of an eye, I was thrust into a cavernous lair that reeked of menace and decay. The underground stronghold was a maze of damp stone corridors and flickering torches. Shadows stretched long and lean along the walls, animated by the erratic dance of firelight. Here, the normal rules of nature twisted into something dark and cruel. My heart, Emery's heart, pounded in my ears as the reality of my capture settled in. I was no longer alone. This was a den of the werewolf mafia, a ruthless pack, led by figures whose power was as brutal as it was absolute. Ruthless eyes glinted from the darkness as hulking silhouettes moved with predatory precision, their snarls and guttural growls cutting through the oppressive silence, each sound a promise of violence. My mind, Emery's mind, raced. In mere moments, I had been stripped of my fragile hope and cast into a world where danger lurked behind every shadow. The air itself felt charged with menace. There was no escape. There was only the cold, hard reality of survival. My limbs trembled, not from cold, but from the surge of adrenaline and the weight of my dire predicament. Every muscle in my body screamed for resistance. And so, amid the oppressive gloom and the howls that reverberated off stone, a fire ignited inside me, a desperate, defiant spark that refused to be extinguished. I was not going to be a pawn in their cruel game. A brutal force slammed me against the rough wall, the impact stealing my breath, but it could not steal my resolve. My Emery's eyes burned with a mix of fear and fierce determination as I assessed my surroundings. Chains and shackles, remnants of past captives, hung from the ceiling like grim trophies. The stench of sweat and iron filled my nostrils. Here, the rules were written in brutality and survival. A hulking figure stepped forward, his eyes cold and calculating. He spoke in clipped, dangerous tones, a leader among these merciless beasts. "You are mine now," he snarled, his voice echoing off the stone, leaving no doubt about his intentions. The words sent a chill down my spine, but instead of yielding, my Emery's inner voice roared back with defiance. My thoughts raced with a single, clear message: fight. Every fiber of my being responded with a primal determination to reclaim my destiny. In that dark, suffocating corridor, the battle lines were drawn. Fear was no longer an option. Survival demanded resistance, and resistance demanded courage. With trembling hands, I tested the bonds that confined me. The chains clinked ominously as I strained against them, my heart hammering with the urgency of my plight. A spark of hope ignited as I recalled the strength that had always resided within me, a strength whispered to me by my ancestors, embedded in my very blood. I was not just a captive, I was a fighter, destined to defy even the darkest of fates. My eyes darted around, seeking anything, a loose stone, a shard of broken glass, a tool that could become my weapon. Every detail was magnified in the heightened intensity of my struggle. The harsh, flickering light revealed cracks in the ancient wall. The rough surface promised a glimmer of escape, if only I could harness my raw, desperate energy. My inner turmoil transformed into active resistance. I flexed my arms and tensed my legs, summoning the deep, unyielding will to survive. A surge of adrenaline bolstered my spirit, and in that moment, I, Emery, decided that I would not cower. Instead, I would rise against my captors, each breath a rebellion against the oppressive darkness. A sudden clatter, a dropped tool, a surprised grunt, disrupted the eerie calm of the corridor. The werewolf leader's attention snapped to the sound, and for a heartbeat, the focus of the pack shifted. This was my opening. With a burst of determination, I, Emery, twisted my body, forcing myself against the cold chains. The metal bit into my skin, a sharp reminder of the physical and emotional pain I had endured, but pain was a small price to pay for the chance at freedom. My gaze flared with defiant brilliance as I vowed silently, I will not be broken. I will fight for my destiny. In that charged moment, as the pack snarls drew nearer, my, Emery's, inner strength surged like a tidal wave. Every doubt, every shred of fear, was cast aside in the face of an unyielding resolve. The cold corridors of the lair echoed with the promise of impending conflict. The room, once a suffocating prison, became the stage for my transformation from a frightened captive into a warrior forged in the crucible of desperation. And as the werewolf mafia closed in, their eyes glinting with ruthless intent, I, Emery, knew that the fight for my destiny had just begun. Each heartbeat, each defiant breath, marked the rise of a fierce spirit that would not be subdued, a spirit ready to challenge fate itself, no matter how dark the night became. The atmosphere crackled with raw energy as the ultimate confrontation erupted beneath a storm-darkened sky, at the periphery of the ancient stronghold where gnarled trees bore witness to centuries of secrets. Kieran stood poised like a living tempest, a force of nature prepared to unleash the fury of destiny. His eyes blazed with a molten intensity, reflecting not only the fire of combat, but also the unbreakable bond with me, Emery, that pulsed through his very veins. Today, destiny had drawn him into a showdown that would determine the future of our entwined souls. Alpha Maddox, the merciless commander of the Dark Forces, emerged from the gloom with an aura of cold authority. His presence was both intimidating and methodical, a predator whose calculated cruelty cut through the chaos of the battlefield like a sharpened blade. With a snarl that resonated across the blood-soaked ground, Maddox signaled his pack, and a horde of feral, snarling werewolves charged forward, their movements a blur of sinewy power and savage precision, each beast driven by a primal hunger to claim victory. Kieran lunged into the fray with explosive speed, his muscles coiled like a spring ready to release. Every step he took was a precise, choreographed dance of combat, his body weaving seamlessly between attack and defense. The clash of fangs against flesh and the ring of crashing bodies filled the air in a symphony of violence. With every strike, his determination surged. He fought not merely for survival, but for the promise of a future that belonged to him and me, Emery, a future where our mate bond would shatter the shackles of fate. Amid the tumult, Kieran's fury reached a fevered pitch as he confronted Maddox directly. Their eyes locked in a battle of wills, one pair steeled with centuries of darkness and cruelty, the other burning with the incandescent light of love and destiny. The ground beneath them trembled as they exchanged blows, a flurry of swift, relentless strikes that blurred the lines between man and beast. Each collision was a testament to the raw power that surged through Kieran's form, the force of his passion, and the echo of every heartbeat shared with me, Emery, fueling his rage. Maddox's ferocious onslaught came in rapid, calculated bursts, his claws honed to deadly precision, raking across Kieran's side, drawing crimson lines that marked the toll of the battle. Yet, with every wound, Kieran's resolve only hardened. The pain was a reminder of what was at stake, a future defined by the love that had ignited within him and the promise of destiny they had dared to embrace. In the midst of the swirling melee, time seemed to slow, and each beat of Kieran's heart reverberated with the weight of every hope and fear, every whispered vow between him and me, Emery. Around them, the battle raged in a chaotic ballet of violence and determination. The snarls of Maddox's pack were punctuated by the clash of powerful limbs and the shattering of bone. Shadows danced wildly as flashes of movement cut through the dim, stormy light, a visual testament to the primal energy of the fight. The air was thick with the scent of blood, sweat, and the unmistakable tang of imminent destiny. Kieran fought with the ferocity of a man possessed, his every movement imbued with the spirit of his mate bond. It was as if my love, Emery's love, had transformed him into an unstoppable force, a guardian of a sacred promise that defied the relentless cruelty of fate. With a mighty roar that shook the very heavens, he launched a decisive assault, his fists and claws working in perfect harmony to break through Maddox's defenses. Each strike was a declaration, a promise that he would never let the darkness win, that every scar, every drop of blood, was a testament to their unyielding bond. In that climactic moment, as the battle reached its zenith, the ground trembled with the power of destiny colliding with survival. The fury of Kieran's assault met Maddox's cold, calculated malice, and the ensuing impact was like the crash of two titanic forces, a moment when time itself seemed to fracture under the strain. A final, resounding blow sent Maddox staggering, his eyes wide with disbelief, as the unrelenting force of Kieran's passion and resolve pinned him against the ancient, crumbling stone. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, a profound stillness that spoke of both the end of a brutal conflict and the beginning of a new, uncharted chapter. In that suspended moment, every drop of sweat, every cry of pain, every pulse of determination converged into one unyielding truth. Destiny had chosen its champions. Kieran, bleeding yet unbowed, stood as a beacon of defiant hope amid the ruins of the battlefield, his mate bond a palpable, incandescent force that could not be extinguished. Then, with a final, resounding cry that echoed into the stormy night, Kieran delivered the decisive strike. Maddox fell, his reign of terror brought to a crashing halt by the raw, indomitable spirit of love and survival. The enemy forces, witnessing their leader's downfall, hesitated and then retreated into the enveloping darkness. In that moment of hard-won victory, the tumultuous roar of the battle gave way to an almost reverent silence, a fragile peace forged in the crucible of fierce combat and emotional catharsis. As Kieran's gaze swept over the battlefield, every scar, every mark of blood and sweat, bore witness to the colossal clash of destiny and desire. The final battle was over, yet its echoes would forever resound in the hearts of those who had dared to fight for a love that defied the very essence of darkness. In the quiet that followed the chaos, the battlefield lay bathed in a somber twilight, a stark reminder that victory often comes at an unyielding cost. The air, heavy with the scent of blood and charred wood, held a bittersweet calm as the remnants of the enemy scattered into the dark corners of the forest. Kieran and I, Emery, stood amidst the ruins of the confrontation, our eyes meeting in a shared silence that spoke volumes of the toll the battle had exacted on both body and soul. Kieran's armor was battered, his skin marked with deep gashes and scars that told the story of a relentless struggle. Yet it was the look in his eyes, a mix of triumph, sorrow, and unspoken resolve, that revealed the true cost of our hard-won freedom. Every breath he took was a testament to the fierce, raw energy of the fight, and every bruise was etched into his memory like a grim reminder of the price of defiance. I, Emery, too bore the physical traces of the battle, a delicate cut along my forearm and the ache in my muscles that resonated with the intensity of every blow exchanged. But the deeper wounds were those carved into my heart, the lingering ache of loss, of the fleeting moments of terror and doubt that had threatened to shatter my spirit. Together, we surveyed the desolate expanse where the remnants of the enemy lay strewn about like discarded relics of a nightmare. The once proud forces of Alpha Maddox were now broken, their sinister presence reduced to scattered shadows and fading echoes. In this silence, the forest itself seemed to breathe a quiet sigh, a testament to the upheaval that had rocked its ancient heart. The bittersweet taste of victory was palpable, mingling with the sorrow of the lives forever altered by the night's events. In the aftermath, time itself seemed to slow. The fierce clamor of combat was replaced by a reflective stillness, punctuated only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of a stream reclaiming its flow. My eyes, Emery's eyes, wandered across the scene, lingering on the jagged marks left by the struggle, the shattered fragments of weapons, the deep gouges in the stone, and the scattered vestiges of a conflict that had been as personal as it was cataclysmic. Each detail was a vivid reminder that, even as darkness had been vanquished, its scars would remain etched in the landscape of our lives. Amid the quiet ruin, a new reality began to take shape, a future defined by the echoes of our fated bond. Kieran's steady presence beside me was a silent promise that we would face what lay ahead together. Our connection, forged in the crucible of battle, pulsed with a resolute warmth that contrasted sharply with the chill that still lingered in the air. In that moment of introspection, I, Emery, felt both the weight of our recent trials and the faint glimmer of hope that hinted at a brighter, if uncertain, dawn. We moved slowly through the remnants of the battlefield, each step deliberate, as if treading on the memories of every fallen enemy and every sacrifice made. Kieran's strong hand found mine, and in that simple, unspoken gesture lay the reassurance of a shared destiny. The scars we bore were not just marks of pain, but symbols of resilience, emblems of a bond that had withstood the fiercest storm. With every heartbeat, our connection grew, intertwining our fates with the quiet power of mutual understanding and unyielding commitment. The calm that followed was not the absence of conflict, but a poignant interlude, a time to gather strength before the inevitable challenges that the future would bring. My mind, Emery's mind, buzzed with quiet questions. What would we face next? How would we rebuild amidst the ruins of a world that had nearly devoured us? Yet, for the first time, these uncertainties were met not with paralyzing fear, but with the steady resolve of a love that had been both tested and tempered in the fires of adversity. In the reflective silence of the aftermath, the landscape transformed into a canvas for new beginnings. The wounded earth and splintered remnants of battle told a story of loss and rebirth, echoing the dual nature of our journey, a journey where every sorrow carried the seed of hope, and every scar was a silent testament to the strength of our spirit. Emery and Kieran, side by side, embraced the fragility and beauty of our shared destiny, knowing that the battle might have ended, but the war for our future was only just beginning. As twilight deepened and the first stars emerged in the cool night sky, we made a silent vow to rebuild, to honor the sacrifices made, and to stand united against the uncertainties of tomorrow. In that sacred pause between the end of conflict and the dawn of a new era, our hearts beat in unison, a steady, resolute rhythm that would carry us through whatever trials lay ahead. Our bond, faded and fierce, shone like a beacon in the darkness, lighting the way toward a future where love, even in its most hard-won form, could conquer the remnants of a shattered past. The initial illumination of daybreak emerged gently over the wilderness, transforming the scenery into a tranquil tapestry of soft, golden hues. In this serene morning, the forest, once a domain of uncertainty and foreboding, now shimmered with the promise of a new destiny. Kieran and I, Emery, stood together on a small elevation overlooking a valley bathed in gentle light. The remnants of night's chaos were slowly yielding to a palpable calm, as if the earth itself were exhaling a sigh of relief and renewal. In that stillness, every detail of nature seemed to speak of a journey well traveled. The dew on the ferns sparkled like tiny jewels, and the rustling of the leaves created a soothing melody that resonated deep within our hearts. It was a morning that bore witness to transformation, not merely of the land, but of two souls that had been forged in the fires of destiny. Together, we had moved from the depths of rejection and despair into the powerful embrace of fate and love, and now, in the soft glow of dawn, we welcomed a future that was as mysterious as it was hopeful. My eyes, Emery's eyes, still glistening with the echoes of past trials, met Kieran's with a silent understanding that transcended words. Our journey had been arduous, marked by the fierce battles of the night and the scars of hard-won victories. Yet here, in the tender light of morning, those hardships had become the very stepping stones to our rebirth. The wilderness around us, once a silent witness to our pain and struggle, now blossomed into a symbol of our united destiny, a living canvas painted with the colors of resilience and enduring promise. As we walked hand in hand along a narrow trail, winding through towering trees, the soft murmur of the forest and the gentle chirping of early birds filled the air with a sense of calm and continuity. The earth beneath our feet, still rich with the remnants of yesterday's battles, had become fertile ground for the seeds of tomorrow. Each step we took together was a reaffirmation of our shared commitment, a commitment to rebuild, to cherish the delicate balance between love and the supernatural forces that had once sought to tear us apart. In quiet moments, we paused to reflect on the incredible transformation we had undergone. Emery, recalled the time when the darkness of rejection had nearly consumed me, when every shadow had whispered doubt, and every cold night had seemed endless. Now, the light of this new dawn carried away those ghosts, replacing them with hope, warmth, and the unwavering conviction that our bond was meant to endure. Kieran, too, felt the weight of the past melt away in the gentle embrace of the morning, his fierce eyes softening into a look of tender assurance, a promise that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them as one. The forest, with its ancient trees and meandering streams, served as a constant reminder of nature's eternal cycle of renewal. It was as if every living element around us had been waiting for this moment, a moment where the pain of the past transformed into the promise of a future replete with possibility. In the dappled sunlight, we could see the subtle interplay of hope and mystery. Each ray of light was a delicate whisper of fate, urging us to move forward with confidence and joy. And so, as the sun ascended higher in the sky, casting long, comforting shadows and filling the air with the promise of a bright day, Kieran and I, Emery, embraced our new reality. Our love, a force that had once been as wild and unpredictable as the very nature that surrounded us, now shone with a steady, reassuring brilliance. It was a love that had defied the supernatural, that had triumphed over darkness, and that promised to continue to illuminate even the most shadowed corners of the world. In that tender, transformative moment, as the wilderness blossomed into a living testament of our united destiny, we took a deep breath together, a quiet vow to cherish every moment and to remain steadfast. No matter what the future might hold, our journey, marked by struggle, passion, and the ultimate triumph of love, was far from over. With the dawn as our silent witness and the promise of a new day guiding us, we stepped forward into the light, ready to write the next chapter of our epic tale. A chapter filled with hope, mystery, and the enduring promise of destiny yet to be fulfilled.